Hey everybody, it's Dr. Nicole. Hope you're all doing well in the middle of this week. It's Wednesday again, although I'm not sure how much relevance the days of the week even have anymore with where we're at with everything. But here we are, another week, a few weeks into um, school, and I was helping teach a class here at the clinic tonight, doing it online for several of our families here at the clinic. And thought before I headed home, I would just pop on here and talk to whoever's on here. And maybe somebody listening needs to hear this. I want to talk about something that's come up quite a bit over the last couple of weeks in my work and the work that my colleagues are doing at our clinic. And I feel like it's important to speak to, and that's the issue of kids not doing as well right now. And we're hearing from lots of families, parents coming in fit to be tied. You know, my child's not doing well. There's more behaviors. School's a problem. He's totally inattentive. And look, I get that there's a lot of struggles right now. I'm not minimizing that. But I do think it's important for us as adults to step back and reset ourselves a little bit and focus on the fact that this is not our kids' fault. This is a really unusual situation in life right now, one that none of us have had to deal with before. This pandemic has gone on and on now. Life has been turned upside down. Routines have been altered. School has been changed. Every activity has been changed. Home life has been changed. Nothing is as it was for lots of kids and families 6 months ago. Everything's different. And it's gone on. And of course, kids aren't doing very well by and large right now. Many adults are not doing well right now. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that and to recognize that um, because we are, in many ways, expecting things from our kids, expecting them to manage themselves, to behave in ways that adults are struggling with right now. So, had a family in the other day who was just spent the whole first part of the session just so angry and frustrated and upset about their child's dysregulated behaviors. And I reminded them that this is a developmentally young child. This is a child who developmentally is around 4 or 5 years of age. This is a child who hasn't left the house much at all in months. Their entire school situation went from being something that was a small group in-person situation for them to being at home on the computer, which has not met that child's needs and not gone well. This child really likes to engage with other people and be social and spend time around other people, and that has all been taken away for months and months and months now. Parents have been stressed at an extreme level. Their job situations have changed. There's been lots of change. And so, yeah, this kid's more dysregulated. This kid is acting out more. This kid is showing more frustration. And that can be frustrating and dysregulating for us as parents. I certainly understand that. But it's really important that we as adults step back and acknowledge what's going on here. We're having a hard time. Kids are definitely having a hard time. Why would we expect kids to be doing well and regulating themselves well and holding themselves together well under some of the circumstances that we've got going on? We're expecting too much from lots of kids right now. And so I don't say that for us as parents to blame ourselves if we've been feeling that way, if we've been feeling just more animosity or frustration with our kids. But we are the adults in the situation, and we do need to take a step back and realize that our thought processes about what's going on with our kids, it matters. And we're sending a message to them every day based on what our thoughts and feelings are around the situation. And so if we are feeling like somehow our kid needs to get it together and just make this work and stop creating problems. We're conveying that, and that's really, really stressful for our kids, and is only going to serve to break down our relationships with them more and make it worse. So I think it's really important for us to remember that our kids really and truly do not wake up in the morning and say to themselves, you know what I think I'm going to do today? I think I'm going to cause problems for everyone. I think I'm just going to be really irritable and grumpy. I'm going to be really resistant. I'm not going to do anything that I'm asked. And I'm just going to try to create as many problems as I can wherever I go today. Sounds ridiculous when I say it, right? And yet, sometimes as adults, we act like that's what our kids are doing, and they're not. I've never met a kid who their main motivation and drive in life from the minute they get up in the morning is, I'm just going to make everybody's life miserable. In fact, my belief is that kids want to do well. Kids want to have adults be pleased with them. They want their parents to be happy with them. They want things to go well and smoothly. They don't intend to create problems or distress. They certainly don't intend to have us be really distressed and upset with them and having a lot of conflict. So we need to recognize that their behavior, when they are falling apart or having more problems, they're communicating to us. They're communicating to us that they're having a hard time. And it's our job to listen to that and to try to do a little detective work to figure out what's going on there. Even kids with good communication skills, kids who don't have any kind of impairment or issues, they still communicate through their behavior, whether they're toddlers or teenagers. One of the ways that we know that there's something going on for kids that we have to sort of get to the bottom of and try to figure out is when their behavior goes sideways. And that can look like temper tantrums in younger kids. That can look like disrespectful, behavior in older kids, but their behavior is telling us something. And so if you've been feeling a lot more frustrated and just really angry or distressed at your kids' behavior, or worried that there's something, major wrong with them, or, that things just aren't working, just take a step back and realize that we need to give ourselves grace to be handling this situation that we're living through the best that we can. And we need to give our kids grace for that too. Recognize that this is hard. This is hard. And of course, a lot of our kids are not functioning at their optimal levels right now. We shouldn't expect them to. We shouldn't expect ourselves to. So some things that I think are helpful to focus on is simplifying expectations. If you're in a situation now with your child where you're just really battling over lots of things, everything feels like an uphill struggle, everything is an argument, everything is a tantrum or a problem or anxious or whiny or whatever, I think it's important to recognize that you need to step back and simplify the expectations. Take some of the things off your child's plate. I don't know, maybe it's school things that are creating a lot of distress, maybe it's expectations at home, whatever it might be. Start to just look at, okay, at least for a few days here, I'm going to pull back on some of these expectations and we're just going to try to reset. We're going to focus on relationship building. We're going to focus on positives. What can we do together to support good feelings? How can we get this train back on a better track? Because I know as a parent, just like you all know, that sometimes we just get on this track with our kids where everything is negative and it's just one thing feeds into the next thing, and we just realize that, oh my gosh, almost everything that happens is just tense and a struggle and negative. We got to get off that track. We have to get back on a more positive, supportive, loving track with our kids. And so that means, I think right now for a lot of kids, backing off with expectations. Maybe it means minimizing some of the things with school. Maybe it means reshaping some of the expectations we have for things that they're going to be doing at home. Now's not the time to be setting the bar high for lots of things. Not in these circumstances when things are still pretty abnormal. There's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety in the world. Routines just aren't there. This isn't the time to be setting the bar real high. So maybe you need to simplify some things, maybe lower your expectations temporarily for a little bit. Again, stop the fighting, stop constantly being in this negative cycle of them being distressed and then you being distressed, and just focus on what you can do to have some positive experiences together. Um, I want to talk too about something else that I'm seeing related to this, of parents coming in to the clinic or calling the clinic. We're getting lots of calls from parents who are suddenly very concerned that their child has ADHD or some kind of attention deficit disorder, that their child has, a severe anxiety disorder, that their child is on the autism spectrum, that their child is having some kind of major psychological problem or diagnosable issue. And I want to speak to that for a minute, because I think it's really important that we reset ourselves around that as well. Yes, many kids are struggling and maybe exhibiting some symptoms of various things right now. Maybe they're things that they weren't exhibiting before. Maybe your child had some tendencies with some of these things, and now this entire situation over the last several months has caused more of that to come out. I think it's really important to recognize that we should not be pathologizing what's going on for kids right now. This is an incredibly abnormal circumstance, and it's not fair or appropriate to make judgments about kids' behaviors or ways that they're trying to cope and manage in this completely abnormal situation. Now, I'm not suggesting that if there are long-standing issues that were in the process of being evaluated or have been, getting worse as these stressors of these times are going on, I'm not suggesting that those aren't things worth looking at and maybe getting some professional help for. But I'm speaking to parents who are concerned that, for example, their 6-year-old who is inattentive and really struggling to stay focused with online instruction in their kindergarten or first grade classroom and is moving around a lot and not getting their work done, that now these kids are being thought of as, oh my gosh, this child has ADHD, this child, isn't able to focus, they're not gonna, get their academics in. What that child is being asked to do is developmentally inappropriate. So we wouldn't judge their behaviors and their ways of coping in an abnormal situation and say, well, this kid has this diagnosis or this problem. We have to look at the context of what's going on. So if you are a parent who has become concerned that, oh my gosh, my child is doing all of these abnormal things, or these are, really big issues right now, maybe those are things that need to be looked at some point. And it may be valuable for you to seek out some professional help. But as an evaluator, as a clinician, I am not looking at this as an ideal time period to be, doing evaluations, to be looking at diagnoses, particularly of behaviorally focused disorders, because the situation is just too abnormal and too developmentally inappropriate to expect lots of kids to handle at this point. Now, that's not to say that kids are not exhibiting symptoms of things. Certainly, there are lots of kids exhibiting more anxiety, more symptoms of depression or anger or inattentiveness, things like sleep problems, bedwetting. Had a mom the other day who was like, oh my gosh, my child now is wetting the bed. They haven't done that in forever. Now it's, it's back. Eating problems, tantrums, all of these things. We need to look at those things through the lens of coping responses. These are signs that a child has maxed out their ability to manage and cope, and they need some support. We don't want to just pathologize them, say, well, now, we need to get a label for you, or no, what we need to focus on is how do we provide these kids with support? Kids who are maybe going back to behaviors or issues that they used to exhibit that had gone away and now they're back, that's a sign that they're struggling to cope with what's going on. If they're exhibiting some of those signs of anxiety, depression, inattentiveness, that sounds pretty normal to me given the circumstances. Those are normal responses in many ways to a very abnormal situation. And guess what? We're seeing that across the board with adults too. So we need to reframe the conversation around, this is not something that is inherently wrong with millions of people right now, adults and kids. we need to recognize that this is normal human response to abnormal situations, and we need to provide supports for that. So again, we look at the behavior, we look at these symptoms as communication, as pieces that um, we can kind of start to put together and say, okay, what's going on for this child? What can we do to support that? Do we need to pull back on some expectations? Do we need to teach some healthier coping skills? Do we need to spend more time together as a family? Do we need to make sure that we're adhering to better routines throughout the day and at bedtime? Do we need to spend some time each day talking with our child about their worries and what's on their mind? Do we need to make sure that we are not overexposing kids in the house to our worries and concerns by talking about them all the time or leaving the TV on all the time or those kinds of things? We want to look at what we can do to create an environment that's going to help them feel like they can manage things better. Because again, all of these behaviors, all of these symptoms are signs that they're maxed out with what they know how to manage. And so that comes out sideways in all different ways. And we see these symptoms develop. So we want to look at how we can support. And that's really how I want you to reframe it. If you're a parent dealing with that, is not immediately going to, oh my gosh, what is wrong with my kid? I need to, get a diagnosis, or there's something terribly wrong here. But to go, okay, wait a minute. Let's look at why this is happening and how we can better support that. And I fully understand that if you're dealing with a child right now who is much more dysregulated, who's having increased difficulties, it is frustrating. I completely understand that. It's important to remember that it's not their fault. It's not your fault either. It's not any of our faults. This is a really challenging situation, but it's important to keep going back in our minds, whether we're parents or teachers or other service providers or whatever role we have with kids. When we start to get really frustrated and distressed with them, to remember, okay, wait a minute, this is not their fault. The situation right now is hard. It's hard, and they're coping the best they can, and we need to give them some additional supports to be able to make it through that. Give them some grace. Give yourself some grace. Each day we have an opportunity to start over. Quite frankly, each hour we have an opportunity to start over. Some days are like that. So to just realize that grace is needed, and to continue to go back to, okay, this is really hard right now. My child's struggling. I'm really, feeling frustrated with the behavior or with the whatever it is, but it's not their fault. How can I better support this situation? And, some things that I think are helpful each day are to make sure that we're focusing on some of the positives, focusing on what's going well. I know as a parent and a professional, even in the midst of the most trying and disastrous of days, there are some positives that we can find. There's something that we can focus on and went well. That's really important to spotlight for ourselves and our kids right now. So don't let the day end with your child, no matter how difficult it's been, without spotlighting something that went well, something that you noticed, them doing something that you're proud of them for, something that brought you joy with them, something. And that has a positive effect on us as parents and adults too, to remind ourselves of, oh yeah, not everything is bad here. So make sure that you're intentional. That's a really simple practice to do every day right now, is to focus on something that went well and spotlight that for your child and yourself. And then keep working on tweaking the things that are causing challenges and that aren't working. Again, if your child's super dysregulated right now, like a family that I was talking with earlier today, their child has been back to some really aggressive, really dysregulated behavior, really difficult things that they haven't seen in a while. And we had to regroup and focus on, okay, it's not his fault. Things are challenging right now. There are some things that are going well. And what I helped them to realize is it's not going to harm anything to back way off with expectations and task demands and things right now. That can wait for later. If your child is in the midst of really difficult and trying behaviors and challenges right now, you're not going to get anywhere by continuing to try to push with things that are causing dysregulation and emotional breakdowns. Now is not the time to be pushing with school or therapy with skills development or expectations around the home or whatever it may be. You're going to be a lot better off backing off. Maybe it's for a day, maybe it's for a week, maybe if it's for a few weeks, to reset. Bring your child's stress level down. Bring their brain out of that constant anxious fight or flight mode. Bring yourself down out of that. Reset. Get a pattern going of more positive experiences together, of things being more calm and settled. And then you can start to add some of the more challenging things or expectations back in. But to keep fighting and pushing when your child is already showing you that they're really anxious or really distressed or really struggling, you're not going to get anywhere. So don't be afraid to back off and reset. You're not going too easy on them. You're not giving up. None of that. You're simply recognizing what your child is trying to communicate right now, which is that they're maxed out. They can't take anymore. They don't have the coping skills or the emotional reserves to handle anymore. And we're recognizing that, and we're backing off to give them the space to say, we see you, we hear you, we understand how hard you're trying and how hard this is, and we're going to help you. So that's a different way of thinking about that, but you're going to get a lot further with those things. Our kids need to see in our words and our actions that we do see them, that we see their fear and their disappointment. We see their frustration. We see their anger. We see their boredom. We see their whatever else they're dealing with. We see it. We acknowledge it. We understand that that's what they're experiencing, and that we love them, and we're going to partner with them in whatever ways we can. We can't change everything about what's going on right now. We don't have control over a lot of things that are happening right now and the way that things are. But we can focus on the things that we can control, and we can show our kids that when we see them reaching a boiling point, when we see our teen isolating themselves and becoming angry and distressed and combative, we can sit alongside them and say, I see you, I hear you, this isn't fair. I get it. I understand why you're behaving this way. I love you. We're going to figure it out. We're going to make this better. Having that conversation. For our younger kids, or our developmentally younger kids, to say, oh, it's so hard. Oh, you're trying. Oh, I know this doesn't feel good to you. To use language that is appropriate for where they're at, but to show them through your actions that you love them, you care about them, no matter how difficult they may be acting right now, and that you're going to keep trying to figure out ways to make this better for them and to help them cope better. They need to see that from us. So it looks like from the comments that this was helpful to some of you. Some of you needed to hear this right now. I hope it was encouraging for some of you. I hope it was an opportunity for some of you to maybe reset yourselves, your perspective, to look at things through a different lens. Really think about how you can partner alongside your kids right now to help them and yourself to do better through all this, as opposed to just butting heads and trying to fight and struggle through it. That partnering and focusing on that relationship is a lot better way to go, and you and your kids will come out of all of this much better for having taken that approach. So it's getting late here on the East Coast. I know many kids are heading to bed, so go give your kids a hug. Tell them you love them. Tomorrow is a new day for you and for them. And as always, I'm here to support you and cheer you on. And I'll be back here again soon to talk with you. Take care.